time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure, so let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Buck Baits,
Better the Hunt,
Rebel 6 Rubs and Seasonings,
Easy Cut,
Limb Walker Game Calls,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Packer Max,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Scent Blocker,
Scent Lock,
Copper John,
and Stanislawski Release Aids. And don't forget, you can catch us in syndication at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on goodtalkradio.com.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. Host Mike Adams sitting in the cabin tonight with a little bit of heat rolling in the house here tonight to stay warm. Things have gotten cold here in Michigan. Sitting here with Dan DeFaw. Just got back from up north. And
yeah,
excited about tonight's show, actually.
I know, right? It was a good day yesterday. Had some great weather. Up there, coming back. Got a little dicey at the very last 5 miles. But
right, but we made it back. So
yeah. So
before we get going tonight, why don't you tell the good people how they can help the good people who help us?
Absolutely. You know, there's nothing better than starting your morning, noon, or night off with a great cup of coffee. Why don't you go over to huntersblendcoffee.com. Help us out by going over there. And if you use the promo code, which Mike's pointing at, or you use capital UNJ on your checkout, and you'll get 10% off on your order.
There you go.
Right?
That's all good.
You know, and there's nothing better than, you know, Buck Baits as well. Great partner we developed last year. We're going to continue this year. And if you want 20% off on your checkout, go over there and use Up North Journal for the code, and they will give you your discount on your way out the door.
But wait, that's not all.
No, absolutely not. Your meal would not be complete without Rebel 6. And if you go on over to rebel6rubs.com and use the promo code NorthJournal, they'll give you 20% on your checkout.
There you go. Got
right.
Like that. So, quick shout out. Victor's in the house tonight. Adam's watching. We got Ron Gerchow. Tim Cius.
Josh
is on. Josh, what do you think? Once again, we did not plan this.
We're like 2 for 2 or 3 for 3 on. We
3 out of 4
we barely talk on Sunday before I come over. So
same shirts on.
Literally, I walk in the closet, I look, I guess, I grab.
Right.
So
and lo and behold, once again, we've got the same shirts on.
We do. You know what? And while people are piling in and watching, we got a question for them.
Yeah, we do. And actually, it's posted up there right now. Have you ever wondered why a deer eye shines at night when light hits it? So, you know, no, never really thought about it. Or, yeah, every time I see one on the side of the road when I'm driving.
It was never explained like it was this past weekend.
That's right. And for those of you who may not know or have seen the videos we posted, we actually did a live stream yesterday from the oldest deer club, hunting club in the United States. I knew it was Michigan, but I didn't know it was the oldest in the United States.
Yes, we were corrected yesterday that it was the United States.
1884.
1884,
Turtle Lake in Hillman, Michigan. 26,000 acres of glorious Michigan northern hardwoods and conifers and swamps and all kinds of goodness. Beautiful place. Friends of ours managed that place, Wayne and Luke Sitton. And once again, we were actually invited up to partake in the annual deer check, health check, with Dr. James Kroll.
And Wayne Sitton.
And Wayne.
Because he slices and dices, too.
Yeah. So
it
was
was kind of fun to watch those two guys work together.
Yeah.
Or actually,
hand in hand, so to speak.
Right,
side by
exactly.
side.
You know, and thanks, Ron. We had a great live feed yesterday.
A lot of good questions, too.
A lot of great questions. It was not the biggest crowd we had seen at a necropsy up there, but it was an inquisitive crowd.
It was.
And the first couple, he took his time, kind of explained the steps and what he's looking for as we went through the process from when they weighed him outside to bringing him in to checking them for age and then putting them up on the table.
Absolutely. You know, and I got to apologize tonight that all the pictures and video from that are still here in my phone. We got a late jump today getting things ready for the show, so you just get to hear us talk about it instead of see it. But if you really want to see kind of what went on, once we're done with the live show here today, just scroll down our page. You'll see what we're talking about with the deer eye when he actually dissected an eyeball and showed why it does what it does. And also, I think we streamed for 45 minutes.
We streamed yesterday. You streamed. Basically, we started the stream when they were bringing the deer in from them aging it. And the first thing he did when first of all, they have a morning meeting, and they're using sharpshooters out there. And the sharpshooters are told specifically where to shoot and what deer are to take. Mm-hmm. Now, that's kind of a funny question, because somebody asked that, not Wayne, Luke. One of the questions off to the side was, how do they know which deer to take?
Absolutely.
Because the question came up because they had two deer laying side by side, and literally one was about the third of the size of the other one, and it was kind of like a moment for when they brought it in that we might have a problem,
because they saw the size of the deer and the age didn't match the deer. Actually, it showed that they aged the jawbone, and it's like, this is a 4.5, 5.5 year old deer. So it's little.
So they're laying there and they're looking at each other, and they extract the jawbone, and Luke come over and ask the Dr. Deer's presence request and make a call.
That's right.
So
timeout on the field.
That's right. It was a timeout.
Got to go to instant replay.
So he walks over and they give him the jawbone, and he looks at it and goes, "Well, it's a 5.5 year old doe." And they're like, "Well, look at it.
It's that one there, the little one."
Right. And I don't know what the weight difference was, but it was considerable size difference.
You could actually see it.
Yeah, and the first thought was the sharpshooter who shot that one probably was having an oh no moment.
Yeah.
But, so how do they determine what to shoot? Luke explained that the sharpshooters are taught the characteristics of the deer that they want to be shot. Mm-hmm. So they're not going off of size, they're going off the characteristics of what that deer looks like.
The physical characteristics.
Yep.
And Dr. Kroll explained it. He said, well, he said, just like people, deer just like people. He said, sometimes you get tall ones, sometimes you get short ones, sometimes you get oversized ones, sometimes you get little ones. And it's just, it wasn't an anomaly or anything. That just happens in nature, I guess. So, but that was kind of good. Got a question there?
No, I'm reading the comments through them, and yeah, you're right, Ron Moses. It was lots of great information. So to finish the story about this deer that was half the size, it was a 5.5 year old doe, which was requested to be taken by the sharpshooter, which he did. So why is the size difference so noticeable? Well, Dr. Deer kind of summed it up real quick.
Yeah. Basically, it's just like people.
Just like people. You've got short ones, you've got tall ones, you've got skinny ones, you've got fat ones.
Yep.
She's a short one.
She's a little one.
His deduction from looking was probably a yearling, a born late fawn that got stunted, but survived.
Yeah. And late fawn drop. And that kind of goes back to what we've all been talking about here for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years about taking the right doe. So our fawn drop occurs at the same time every year. We inundate the predator population with fawns so they can't take all of them. When you spread that meal out over 3 months, when you have a first, second, and third rut, then they've got, meals for 3 months.
Right, exactly. So he kind of did this. He says you want your rut to do this, basically straight up and down. Unfortunately, if your deer-doe ratio is out of whack, it looks like this.
Yeah. And that's not good.
Yeah. So you end up having the trickle rut, as we've talked about, and you end up like with 3 ruts. But there was another factor in last year's rut that kind of, he pointed out that, well, we had some moon problems.
Yeah. I was talking about the different moon phases. We had
a super moon,
and then we had a blue moon,
and then
in October,
because the moon phases is what helps the deer go into their cycles. And so by having them so close together, it threw their body off. Your question, I think, was...
Well, yeah, he talked about that. It screwed up the rut. And I said, well, was the rut early or was the rut late? And he looked at me and he went, yes. And I'm like, okay. But basically what had happened is there was 2 full moons in the month of October. And, one fell early, one fell late, and the moon phase just kind of, where those full moons were happening, kind of pushed that rut. And I guess it confused the deer,
it did.
The deer's biology.
Yep, that's what it did. It confused them, and it started, stopped. And so what you ended up having is these deer, their cycles were all messed up. So it kind of, and it was proven a little bit later on as to his mentioning of the moon phase, what it did to the rut, and then it was proven a little while later when they were looking at the size of some of the fetuses that they were taking.
Yeah, because they had you could tell there was like a 3-4 week window in between some of those, the larger ones and the smaller ones, or you had some that were kind of in the middle. It's just there wasn't a lot of consistency there.
Right, exactly.
Which I've never seen before since the 8 or 9 years that I've been going up there. So
tells you that the moon really played an effect.
Yeah.
So so that was really cool. A lot of interesting facts that come out. And he'll even explain some things that there's these little worms that are in the deer's track, and they have no idea what they do.
Yeah, in the intestinal pouch, the gut sac.
Yep.
So intestinal worms are long. They're like monofilament, he explains, but it doesn't hurt the deer, doesn't help the deer. Really don't know how they got there, but they're not in every one of them. So somehow or another they get these things.
Right. So you get little tidbits of information like that.
Going back to the moon messing things up. The one thing that we saw there was kind of I don't know if he called it an anomaly or it was something he'd only seen 4 or 5 times in his career. There was a doe that they opened up, and most of the time, like Dan and I was like, okay, how old do you think that deer is? And we'll kind of guess. And the older does, I'm like, I bet you there's 2 doe fawns in there, because that's what we've seen over the years, and that's what the data shows. The older the deer is, the more likelihood of it throwing 2 doe fawns. And it's like, okay, we expect 2 doe fawns to come out of there. And lo and behold, 2 doe fawns, but they weren't the same size, which means they were bred at different times.
They were
conceived at different times, like 10 or 11 days apart.
Most of the time when they measure them out, and there's 2 of them, they're within a millimeter.
They're within a day of each other.
Yeah. So this was 11 millimeters difference. Mm-hmm. So they have a little calculator. They go back, and that turned out to be 11 days difference
of gestation
of breeding. So literally, she got pregnant once, and then 11 days later, got pregnant again.
Yeah, and that was, he said, could possibly be due to the moon cycle. And he had mentioned that we talked a little bit about that because we've heard people say, and it does happen, that a doe can be bred by 2 different bucks. They'll throw 2 fawns, and they'll be sired by different bucks.
Yep.
But he said typically when your buck to doe ratio is like it should be, or a lot closer together, that a dominant buck does most of the breeding. And when he breeds a doe that first time, he'll tend those does. And we all talked about tending does. They'll tend them, and they'll run other bucks off so they can breed them again the next day, while they're still in cycle. And that's where you get that day or 2 of separation of the gestation when they measure
right.
Them. But this one, it was
considerable.
It was a lot.
You laid them out together, and they were a considerable difference.
Yeah. So
which we talk about the buck to doe ratio at the beginning when they kind of did a summary of what was going to go on for the day. The club last year had a 1.7 to 1 buck to doe ratio. Mm-hmm. So that's what they were going off of last year. They ended up taking 400 does last year. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wow, that's a lot. But the bucks also that they've taken mm-hmm. were better quality and improved bucks.
Right.
So what they're going to do is they're going to do the necropsy. Then they're going to take the data that they've gotten from all the deer last year. Then they'll come up with the regulations that for the club they'll do this year. But right off the top of his head, it looked like he said we'll probably be shooting the same, if not more, does this year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of, really cool. And he said, now granted, Turtle Lake is 26,000 acres. Mm-hmm. He says, but you can manage 10, 20, 5. You can manage your own land mm-hmm. and try to do your best. Because obviously we all got different factors, whether it be neighbors, time, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So he was pushing, Turtle Creek does this, but they're able to. But on a smaller scale, everybody can take part of this and be a conservation, be aware of what we're trying to do to help out the deer population.
And the thing, too, being if you've got a smaller piece of land or maybe you don't have the monetary means to be able to do something, do what you can, because everybody plays a role in this, and the more people that do, the better off our habitat and our deer herd is going to be. I tell you what, Dan, let's go ahead. We'll take a quick break. We come back.
Yep, we got a question.
We got a question here, so I want to kind of cover that. So we're going to step outside, take our first break. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible.
By basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Second segment of the show.
Real quick, we've got a poll going when we start the second segment here. Have you ever wondered why a deer's eye shines at night?
Okay.
We'll explain that in a little bit.
88% say, yeah, every time they see one while they're driving at night.
Right?
13% said they've never really thought about it. So there's a few
Exactly.
people out there, and we'll kind of talk about that here. Let's save that for the next segment.
Yeah, exactly. So going on what Kevin here says, Dr. Deer talked about winter food and that sugar beets are bad for deer, called it
Sloshing?
sloshing stomach or something like that. Yeah. So when they walk, you hear a sloshing stomach, dead deer walking. Now, he talked a lot about the good, the bad,
The
ugly for deer.
Right.
Phosphorus. They can only 17% fat is what they can handle.
I don't know if I was fat. I know it's 17% protein. I can't remember the fat content. I think it's real low. They have a hard time digesting pure, a regular fat type. And really, the only thing he said that really carries fat out in nature is pure soybean.
Right.
And then he talked about most places have a phosphorus deficiency, and they need phosphorus for antler development and for making milk. So it's really important in the fawning season.
Right, and that's one thing he did say was about the milk that they did. And trust me, when Dr. Deer mentions something and he puts out a statement or a fact, he'll always say, "We have data to back that up."
Yep.
And that can go in any question that he'll answer, and he'll put that on the back of that. You gotta like that, because there was actually some other questions that he said that kind of raised my eyebrow. But anyways, along the sugar beets, he actually said that, yeah, you're right. Overabundance of sugar beets would be bad. Moderation, probably not as bad. His example was the whole big pile with the deer standing, and that's all they ate.
Yeah, because what it does is it's simple sugars, and it breaks down in their stomach. It's 3-chambered esophagus and then their actual stomach. But
right,
I see. There's the reticulum, the omasum. I can't remember the other two. But anyway, the first chamber it gets into, it's pH neutral all the way through the first 3. And when that pH gets upset, when it starts trying to break down those simple sugars, it turns acidic, and then it starts to eat away at the lining of that first chamber, and it has a hard time absorbing. And that's what he's talking about, the sloshing, because then it builds up, and you have a lot of liquid inside of it. That's when you get the runs, and instead of the pellets being solid, it's basically runny, and
right,
diarrhea, and that's when he talked about dead deer walking.
So he actually said that apples were a good one for deer to have. Sugar beets not so good because of the sugar. He broke it. The carrots kind of fall into the sugar beet thing, and there was another one that
the brassicas.
The brassicas definitely.
Too much corn's the same way.
So basically, what you got to understand is when you have a one simple food source of one or the other, that's when it's bad. If you do it in moderation, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, that's okay. So some of these things that he gets really upset is you see fields and fields and fields and fields of a certain type of plant, and actually that might not be good. They should not be planting that much of it. He said the cereal wheats, the cereal grains, and the legumes, yep, the clovers are the 2 best types to provide for a deer. They try with carbohydrates with corn, but they found out that you have to definitely put an electric fence around them, or else they'll just graze them off.
Right.
So he spent a lot of time talking about, like Mike said, the pH balance of the stomach starting off at 7, getting down to the last chamber, which is 3. and how these things can affect a deer as we go through the winter of where they started, where they are as of yesterday, and where they're probably going to end up closer into April and May's green up.
And one thing I didn't really see a lot of there, we didn't see at all, I don't think, was any pneumonia. The snow depths up there right now are 8 to 12 inches deep. It's not extremely deep. They haven't had an extremely hard winter like they do a lot of years we've seen here in northern Michigan. And I think with that, the deer seem to be pretty doggone healthy right now. The kidney fat, they measure kidney fat index around the kidneys, and the does will actually start using that up in these harder parts of the year. And we've seen it before where it was okay, but it wasn't great. But this year, it seemed like every time they pulled a kidney out, it was just covered, it had fat around it. Good body fat.
Right. And one of the things that they had the first 2 deer laying there, and the first question he said was, what's so different about these deer? And you look at them, and you could definitely tell that one coat was different than the other coat. And he says, my guess is, and he'll state something, that deer is probably a visitor
from another neighboring property.
And he says we've done trail cam studies because their club is fenced and non-fenced. So what they did was they put cameras at the fence openings, and basically what they seen happen is they've seen the does come in and the bucks leave.
The yearling bucks leave, and that goes back to buck dispersal, when the does start to kick the young bucks out right before fawning season. And that's where you get your buck dispersal. There's been a lot of talk about that, even with when people talk about CWD and how it spread, and deer being social, and then the doe groups hang together. But right before that fawning season, that they kick the bucks away or kick the yearling bucks away, and then they leave the area to form another group somewhere else. So
right, exactly. So. And
I wonder if that's part of the problem we have at our camp. When he said that, it made me. I always try to think back to our camp and what we're doing and things that we're seeing and why are we seeing things a certain way. And we'll see. We'll put trail cameras up. We'll see a lot of doe, and then right after fawning season, you start to see that antler growth. But then the bigger bucks tend to disappear. I don't know if it's nocturnal or whatever, but we start to see some bucks that have never seen on camera before. Right after the fawning season. And I wonder if we're attracting more does because we're the only place in a probably a 4 or 5 mile area that has food plots. So we're drawing these deer in, but is that they're kicking the yearling bucks out and they're dispersing, and we're not seeing that influx. And that not only that, we just got an overabundance of deer. Our buck to doe ratio is out of whack.
Well, absolutely, and the same thing in the UP that I have is I'll see a lot of does, and then I'll catch some bucks traveling. And then all of a sudden they'll disappear a little bit, and then they come back. Mm-hmm. Then you end up with new bucks.
Right.
So it's like, wow, where were you? Kevin Stevens, we have deer die that seem health. Every year this time of year to spring thaw. Local farmer always leaves 10 plus acres, so this could be happening, but also have corn standing. What's he leaving 10 plus corn? What's he leaving 10 acres of?
Seem healthy every year. Time of year due to the spring thaw. If they're bucks, okay.
So
let's go back to the weather we talked about. Right now we've got pretty decent weather. Haven't seen a lot of pneumonia. When you've got an overabundant, and this is just a guess. This is just something that we've been taught through the deer and crop season, other things that we've been to. But when you've got too many does, your buck to doe ratio is out of whack, and you get that. You got your first rut, then you'll have your second and maybe a third rut, that trickle rut. Your bucks start to chase does. They gear up. They don't really worry about eating too much. They're not replenishing that body fat. And as you get into December, January, that second and third rut phase, these deer have been chasing does for 3 months. Their energy stores are depleted, and then all of a sudden you get these hard freeze ups. Long periods of winter where they haven't eaten a lot in a long time. And if you've got an overabundance of deer in the area, then your habitat's being overbrowsed. There's not a food source. So these bucks can't replenish their body fat, and they wind up getting pneumonia. They may look healthy, but I would say if you see dead deer, open them up and see if there's anything that indicates, something. Pneumonia usually shows up. You'll see that it's like a spider web mesh of film and between the lining of the chest cavity and the lungs, and they did find one that was the lung was stuck to that inner chest cavity, and they said that's an adhesion for, where it had pneumonia before and it stuck, and like people after they have surgeries, they have scar tissue, and it actually have adhesions. So that would be kind of a guess. Just
right.
Simple guess.
So speaking of that as well, this deer that they said was a traveler deer, they opened her up. They actually one of the first things they do is they cut the front leg off and they look at the bone marrow.
Right.
And the bone marrow can either be white, pink, or red.
Runny.
White is really good. Pink starting to stress. Red, runny is dead deer walking.
Yeah.
And that deer that they opened and he said was probably a traveler was under stress.
Oh, it was. See, I didn't pick up on that. I was probably busy doing something else.
So with that being said, he's leaving 10 acres of sugar or fodder beets. If that's the only thing around, that might not be good.
Could be.
If it's their only source of food, according to Dr. Deere, that is not good.
It's not good. Nope.
Right. So that would not be good. And there's a whole bunch of factors as we go through this winter. Mike said the rut itself. The weather factors, how much snow you're getting, how cold it is, just things that others play on the deer themselves.
The normal winters, and if those bucks are chasing for long periods of time, you're getting that second, third rut, it takes a toll on them. It really does.
It does, exactly. And Shasta and Lincoln Roan are joining us, so that's kind of cool. Welcome to the show.
And Shasta, thank you actually for your group being allowing us to come in on that. That it's just, I can't say enough at how great of a educational venue it is to be able to go watch. And actually, our newest member at our hunting camp, AJ Regal, who went with us to get some education on deer, we stand there and they put him on the line.
Yeah,
so they put him to work yesterday.
You don't stand around too long.
That's right. He got his hands dirty. So
he did get his hands dirty.
He was excited about that.
So So from the minute they check the age of the deer till they open them up, they're looking at glands. They're looking at besides the inside of the deer. They're looking all over this deer for any possible thing.
Absolutely.
Even liver flukes.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
that's always good.
You'll never, and like Dr. Deere said, if once you see this, you're never going to look at a deer again.
In the same way,
right?
I say it doesn't make me stop from looking at deer. You don't look at them the same way.
And when you see liver flukes, you'll never look at that liver again.
Yeah, in the same way, it's something else. But no, when I go to deer now, I'm looking at things a little more critically. I'm looking at different things now, other than just a gut pile. Much like I never thought about the eyeball stuff. That was pretty cool as well.
Eyeball stuff is cool. He specifically went into a little subject of the eyeball itself, kind of explained how they see, the way they look, and everything. And it was really cool.
You want to talk about that in the next segment?
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's take a break. We'll step outside. We're going to take our next break. We'll come back. We'll talk about deer eyes. Pretty cool stuff. We'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Welcome back. Third segment of the show. And actually, the numbers have changed on our poll. Got a little poll running here today. Have you ever wondered why a deer eye shines at night? And 78% said yes. Every time I see one when I'm driving at night, they're beside the road, I think about it. And 22% say no, never really thought about it. So, with that being said, he pulled out. One of the guys there on the line pulled out
an eyeball,
which was pretty cool. And they took it apart and talked about the different parts about this. And actually. And I had known from other things that I've learned about deer that they see blue and they see kind of in that yellow range.
Yes,
they're colorblind. Red-green colorblind.
Yes,
like some people are.
And Actually, it was kind of cool. He gave a name of a website that you can take a picture to, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
He said they were online. Actually, I did go today and look. And
did you find it?
I looked all over, and a lot of the websites don't have it anymore. These were older sites, but what I did find was a site that pushed me to an app on the Apple App Store, and it is called to Daltonize Me Cam. Daltonize Me Cam, I think, is the name of this app.
Okay.
And Dalton was the guy who kind of come up with this colorblind thing. I did a little research today online, and it's called Daltonization. Daltonization is, basically being colorblind.
Yep.
So if you take this app that I actually put on my camera or on my phone, you can take pictures and put in this app, and it will show you what it looks like. It'll take your picture. So if you take a picture in your hunting clothes
and use that, this is what you look like to a deer.
Yeah. So
you look yellow.
Yellowish. And you were wearing blue yesterday.
Yeah.
And Dr. Deer looked at you and said, you'd stand out like a sore thumb.
Right, exactly, because they could see that. Kevin, he says no have standing corn too, which is good, along with the neighboring farmers who sell beets for bait. They killed 15 antlerless and 6 bucks this year off this property. But always find these dead deer February through April the past few years. Maybe it is stress like we stated. Sure.
Could be.
There's could be a ton of things going on.
If it, kind of back up to this question, if it were me and I was seeing a lot of these things, go to our scroll down our page when we're done here today and watch that 45-minute section of video, or if you already have, because it kind of sounds like you did because you're mentioning some things. Go out there when you find these deer, open them up. Look for some of these things that Dr. Deer was talking about, and see if you can kind of come up with a consensus of is it the same types of things that you're seeing,
right,
in all the deer, and maybe make those changes to take that that situation away, whether it be sugar beets or too much sugar beets, too much corn, or what have you.
And matter of fact, if you do that, take pictures.
Take pictures, yeah,
because you can always send a picture and ask, hey, I seen this.
Yeah.
Does it mean anything?
Or shoot a little video snippet of it,
Right.
It's a good way to start documenting some of those things, We found a young buck dead on our property, and we had one of the guys from that camp over, and we were doing some work. They were consulting for us, and we actually found a young yearling buck that was dead. And they opened it up and looked at it, did a little field necropsy right there on the spot, and it was basically starving to death because it was full of pine needles, sweet ferns.
Right, Kevin. So that's a quick one you can do when you can. They did that last year. A quick one you can do is if you find a dead deer and you open it up and you look in the stomach and you see what's in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the typical matter that's in the area. Well, but like in Mike's case, it was all just full of pine needles and
sweet ferns.
It was sweet ferns, which is totally useless to a deer, except for the fact that it's thinking it's eating and it's
filling its belly,
but it's not working. It's not helping.
Yep.
So that would be a good one. Ron, it'll be in our video section on Facebook, so you can go back and watch it as many times as you'd like. And you're right. Being a big open garage is the way it was. It was very loud in there, especially if they were opening up the door to let deer in and people talking. And
I shot the whole thing on the phone.
Yeah.
We didn't take the studio up there. It's like that. That's probably next to impossible. But no, we they allowed us to actually live stream. And when you're shooting on a cell phone, it can sometimes be a little hard to hear.
So so there's a couple things you can do, Kevin. Let us know. Let us know what happens in April and March, April, May for you when you're out there and whatever farm you're on.
Get back in touch with us. Maybe if you've got some interesting information, we can have you on the show and we can talk about it.
Yeah. So he started off holding an eyeball, and if you watch the live stream, you can see him holding an eyeball.
We didn't live stream that. I just recorded it and I actually posted that today.
Okay, so it's in a video Mike posted earlier this morning. So then he decided to slice and dice it. He said they're very hard to do because they're very tough.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing he did is he removed the lens.
That was kind of cool looking.
It was kind of cool looking.
Yeah.
And he said, and it was pretty big. And
a deer's eye is pretty big. I mean,
yeah, it kind of fit, obviously.
The one thing that their eyes is a little different than ours is the pupil. Our pupil is round and closes, opens and closes much like a camera.
Yep.
Aperture, it is like when you shine light into it, you can see it, start to close. And then a deer's eye, and I learned this in Deer Steward 1, is that it's more elongated. It's long and narrow.
Right, and it opens up that way.
Yep, opens like a blind.
Yes.
Window blind, kind of.
And that's how come they can see, with a little bit of moonlight, that's how come they can see so well in the evening in dark. But on a sunny day, it's almost like snowblind.
Right.
To them.
And looking back at that, too, one thing of the things that we learned in deer steward class is the reason they think that their eyes are shaped like that is, a deer, usually they don't look up. Unless you're in a tree stand, you're getting busted. But I mean, generally speaking, a wild whitetail, they're looking forward, they're looking around, they have their head to the ground, and when their eyes rotate up, they've got that slit style opening.
Yep.
In their pupil. It allows them to see the horizon and keep their eyes, trained on the horizon, their surroundings, because they can see 300 degrees.
Yes.
That's their peripheral vision. So there's only about 60 degrees. If you walk up on a deer directly behind it, only way you can really get up behind one without being detected if you're walking, moving. But the way it's shaped allows it to see more area, and it's a protection mechanism.
Exactly. And so he started there. He worked from there inside the eye. Then he went all the way to the back of the eye, and then turned it inside out, and it reflected.
Yeah, it's got a mirror. It basically sets like a mirror. Light passes through the rods and cones and hits that back there. The retina is attached to that top on that mirror portion. It goes through and bounces back, and when it bounces back, it reprocesses the light. So he said that's what you're seeing is that light reflecting backwards, coming back through to be reprocessed.
And he said if we shut off all the lights in there and you shine the flashlight at it, you'd exactly see what you see a deer at night.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. It was literally like you can see the reflectiveness as he held it in his head.
Yeah, you could. It was. It almost reminded me of that coating you see on like aviation sunglasses.
Yeah.
That iridescent bluish greenish tint.
Yep.
It's kind of what it reminded me of.
It was really cool. So he did and Mike taped it, a whole section on just the eyeball. And he probably could have done that with every part of that deer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He took his time with the kidneys. He took his time with the eyeball. He took his time with the uterus and the fetuses and everything. And he went gland by gland, basically, from when they bring it in all the way to the end.
Yeah. So once again, learned a whole lot. Here in this last part of this segment, I kind of want to touch on something that it's like, okay, so what did we really learn yesterday that we didn't know before? There was two takeaways for me. He was talking about bears, black bear being, predatory on fawns. And we've seen this at our camp. We've talked about it before we left some rye get extremely tall. I mean, it was a good 4 feet, maybe taller. I mean, we had a really good growing season that rye was tall. I've got a picture of it somewhere. One of our guys standing in it, and you can just see basically his shoulders up. Long story short, he was watching bears, and they would systematically zigzag and search this field.
Because a bear's nose can smell 400 times better than a bloodhound.
And that's the one takeaway for me. I knew a bear's nose was good. I knew they were really good, but because that's their basic defense mechanism, because they really can't see a whole lot.
Right.
But with that being said, I was like 400 times more than a bloodhound. And everybody, bloodhounds, that's what we use to hunt with, and they use them to track people. People are missing or fugitives or what have you. And I was like, wow, that's incredible that was one of the takeaways for me. And actually, you and I have talked a little bit about trying to do a bear hunt this year, and it's going to make me think a whole heck of a lot more critically about, scent control in the woods.
Well, there's scent control, and there's what he said about the bear being the number one, which kind of, if you don't think about it, you're thinking, it's always the coyotes, the wolves, bobcat, but it's actually the bear.
Well, in that area.
I think it's the same up in the UP.
Because there's states, that really don't have bears.
Right.
Or they get very few. So then it's going to be a coyote. But it's using what he was talking about is just the fact that the bear do a lot of predation. And we knew they did some, but I didn't realize it was quite so high. So
right, exactly.
And then you throw a bunch of bobcat and then you throw a bunch of coyotes on the scene. And this year, it's going to be interesting to see what we see this spring. We really kind of thought at our camp that we might not shoot a lot of doe this year, and really, I don't think any were taken. There's only 2 of us that hunted this year on the property.
Yeah, I think you're going to need to take some does.
But it's going to be interesting to see what kind of recruitment we've got when we start putting trail cameras up.
It'll be interesting to see because you really up there, you really didn't have a lot of snow in the woods.
No,
which is good. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what your winter kill will be, and in leading into your fawn drop where you're going to be at.
Yeah,
because over there, just a few miles away, they're shooting like 400 does plus. So
right.
And
it sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, on that size of piece of property, it's and they said they didn't shoot enough.
Right, exactly. Well, that was the thing. We shot them, but probably wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. And okay, so your takeaway was that. My takeaway was a little different. It actually started in the beginning when we were at a deer necropsy, but Luke got to talking about the last 3 or 4 years that they've really gotten Luke really into looking into the trees.
I know where you're going. That was my second big takeaway.
The basically plotting out the property and knowing what trees are where, from oaks to aspens to pines to conifers to knowing what's over here, what's over there, the age of them. What are we going to do about new oaks? We've got old oaks. They've got middle oaks. So that's what he's been doing the last 3 or 4 years. And so he talked a little bit about the oak trees. He said up in that area, all the oak trees are about the same age because they all started after the Great Fire.
Yep, about 90 years ago. In the early 1900s, there was a fire that burned most of northern Michigan.
Right. And he said, and that's when these oak trees started. Mm-hmm. And so they started growing. They're all growing about the same. And an oak tree at about 60 to 70 years of age will lose its ability to...
Stump sprout.
Thank you. Stump sprout.
That was the big takeaway for me, because that's what we've been talking about at our camp, is cutting some of our oak stand and allowing it to regenerate. But it's like, okay, well, now we really got to critically think about what are we really doing here and how are we going to approach this. There's really no easy answer.
No, they're
they're not quick growing trees.
And so besides that, they asked them, so how do you manage 26,000 acres? And they do it at 100-acre increments. So with that being said, Luke has gone out. They've looked at the oak trees. They say if you see an oak tree that like 3 are really close together that are growing about the same, that's from a stump sprout. If you see a single one, that's
a seedling.
That's a seedling from an acorn. And once they get past 60 or 70, they won't. So he's like, well, okay, so now you got to get rid of those. But it takes them a long time.
So what's there is no easy answer. There's no easy answer to say, okay, well, I need to cut trees down. I need to replant. Do you go bare rootstock? Do you go potted plant stock? And he said that they were seeing a little more success with the potted plant trees.
Yes, the bare roots kind of didn't really go well. The potted ones were the best. One thing Dr. Deere said was, and he can't explain this, but he said deer know the difference between fertilized plants and unfertilized. Mm-hmm. He goes, I have no clue how they did it. There was a study that they did, basically a fertilized side and a non-fertilized side, and all the deer walked right over it and went to the fertilized side. Mm-hmm. He goes, he has no clue how they do it. So
it's their first choice. With
that being said, if you're going to go be planting trees and stuff, you kind of want them not fertilized for at least a year, which if you buy them, if you're going to buy them in advance, you could probably tell the nursery or wherever you buy them, don't fertilize them. But most of the time, if you're buying them from a place, it's already happened. Mm-hmm. So I found that kind of like, ooh. Mm-hmm. But he said, yeah, no, but fertilized, unfertilized, they know the difference. But yeah, but Luke has really gotten into the trees and what they're doing and a plan and how to proceed forward, what to plant, what not to plant, how they want it to do, whether they're going to plant pines or we saw some planted pines driving in.
Yeah, I spoke with him back in the summer. I got to spend an afternoon over there with him, and we were talking a lot about trees. And one of the things we kind of come up with is talking about planting potted stock into these areas. If you plan on doing that, don't buy all like one size. Get staggered growth sizes so you've got some variety of growth. It's not all the same. And in space you're planning out, don't plant them all like if you've got X amount of dollars to spend, don't spend all that whole pot of money at one time. spread it out over a year, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever you can. Because if you have a bad season and for weather or whatever reason, all of a sudden, bang, you shot all your money.
And you can buy trees in like 3 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8 sizes. And, so kind of go up and down there, and then you can plant that year's selection. Don't plant them all close together. Plant them around. But
and mix the varieties up
in
the area. Unless, I think the one thing that they were talking about is, at one point, was the thermal cover. Spruce and conifers. That's that deer are going to require some thermal cover.
Yeah, they will need thermal cover.
So that's the one thing that you can grow really fast is spruce trees and conifers. The evergreens, they're going to grow a lot quicker than any other tree, so to speak. So. But it's just interesting. There's so much to take in. There's so much to learn, and it's you try to grab on the bits and pieces. When I went back and I've watched the live stream that we did yesterday, I've already watched it twice. Plus we were there yesterday, and it's like I pick little things up each and every time, something different, and it's it's a process. It's like, are we going to be able to fix everything that we've got in a year? No, it ain't going to happen. Are we going to be able to fix it in 5 years? No. It's a process, and that's something you need to keep in mind. It's a continual, steady progress of moving in a general direction.
And don't forget, whether you've got 5 acres
or 500
or 50 million, you can do something to help out the deer population. And you're not just helping out the deer population. One of the things they did was asked, hey, what are you going to do with all these guts? So they put them in a bobcat. We saw them on the way out. But what they do is they probably going to go dump them in the woods. Sometimes they put a camera on them just to see what's going on, who comes in, who comes out. One of the number one feeders off the gut piles is the bald eagle.
I thought that was pretty cool.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
He says, but then you have a hierarchy of animals that start to parade in.
Yeah.
Starting from the little, and they get bigger and bigger. And then the bald eagle shows up, and they're kind of the king there.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take our last break because we're running a little long here on this segment. Come back, we'll wrap up the show. I've got a couple little thoughts that run through my head. So we're going to step outside. We'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Last segment of the show.
How's the poll looking for our last segment?
82% say that, yeah, they've thought about what makes a deer's eye shine. And 18%, no, they've never really thought about it.
Cool.
So
that's good.
There's a few
people are thinking.
Yeah. You got back to, you were talking before we went to break about what people can do, some of the things they can do to better their deer habitat or help the deer herd or wildlife in general. And he said the one thing that you can really do is a deer needs 2 to 3 gallons of water, or basically 2 to 3 gallons of water. I think it was gallons a day.
Oh yeah,
as they're processing food
yeah.
in there, because it's basically 4 chambers and they're regurgitating, chewing, and basically chewing their cud.
Yep.
So with that being said, he said the simplest thing, if you don't have extra money to spend, he said the one thing you can do is provide water sources for deer. We've all seen them. You go to your farm and fleet or whatever.
Blue pools.
Yeah, you get a blue pool, or you can get those black tubs, shallow pool tubs. Dig out a little area, put one in, and for it to collect rainwater. Have a place for them to water.
Yep. And with that being said, there was a tip with our friend Lincoln Roan over at Packer Max. Is a person had a blue pool used as a water source in the field, and when they were done using the Packer Max, they wheeled it over there and they emptied it out right into the pool.
Yeah, it's got the little screw cork on the side. You undo that drain and let the water drain right into the pool.
Yep.
That way, it's a double use. You use the water to pack the soil with the Packer Max, and then the Packer Max actually acts as a water wagon.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool.
That was pretty cool.
Absolutely. And also taken away from everything that we talked about, everything we've seen, it kind of makes you feel good, because what you're trying to do is you're not that big bad hunter that's going out there you're actually going out there as a conservationist to try to why does Turtle Creek do this? Turtle Lake, sorry.
Turtle Creek is the casino.
Yeah, Turtle Lake. Why is Mike taking the time? Why am I taking the time to have my property logged and everything? It's to help not just the deer. It's to help all the wildlife around, whether it be bugs, whether it be bald eagles.
You know, pollinators are a huge thing right now. I mean, kind of chase a rabbit here towards the end of the show, I guess. Pollinators are huge. You know, and that's been the big talk in the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. The seminars and things that I've been going to. Honeybees. I mean, honeybees are in trouble.
Yeah,
you got to have pollinators to pollinate plants for us to be able to eat, and you know, the wildflowers and everything. You know, all the forbs that wild plants that deer and other animals eat. So it's really important. When, you know, we've kind of not thought a lot about it, but you know, do we need honeybees up at our area at our camp? Is that something we should try to do? Maybe let a couple of our food plot fields maybe go feral and become more natural vegetation. But it's like, how does all that start playing together? My biggest concern is we get honeybees up there. How are we going to keep them viable? Because the bear are going to raid.
That's an interesting one, because I was going to mention to do something, but then I figured out, wait a second. I'm thinking if you leave a beehive, if you got a beekeeper to bring beehives in just to let them use the land for his purpose,
right?
They'll go in there and they'll crush those things.
Yeah, it's a problem. I know a guy that actually has a bunch of beehives up in the area where I went elk hunting, and that's been the biggest problem, was how do you keep bears out of the beehives?
Yeah, how do you know? We do have a question. How can you help the deer if you're hunting state land with the baiting ban?
With the baiting ban, first thing I'd do is, do they issue doe permits? You know, do you see an overabundance of does? You know, it's kind of hard to do a trail cam survey on state land, but I mean, you get a general consensus if you're overrun with does. If you're going to shoot a doe, shoot the right doe. Shoot the older does, you know, 4.5 years and older. You know, target those older does, and you're like, well, how do I know what doe to shoot? 3 years ago, I was at the Anchor Creek, first annual Anchor Creek Co-op rendezvous, and Wayne Sitton, who is the manager of Turtle Lake, gave a presentation there, and he allowed me to actually videotape this. I don't know if we live streamed. I know I videotaped it, but it's on our Vimeo page. And Vimeo.com, Vimeo.com, and just search Up North Journal. And you'll see the Anchor Creek Cooperative Rendezvous on there. And I think it's a 20 or 25-minute video
of telling you how to decipher and shoot the right does.
And why you should. There's a whole presentation of why and how they figured these things out. It's basically the educational side of what we kind of did yesterday and what they were looking for. But he puts it into a presentation and shows you, this is why we do this. This is why we do that. You know, if you shoot the right doe, these are the end results. You know, here's, the formulas, general formulas and things that they use. You know, they say, to maintain your current herd population, basically 33%, you need to shoot a 30-year does every year just to maintain.
Correct. To maintain,
if the age structures are correct.
If everything's right and you have 100 deer or 100 does, you have to shoot a third of them. If you don't, you'll end up with more. Mm-hmm. It's what it is boiling down to, especially on state land. I understand it is tough in some of the areas. Southern Michigan state lands are basically pumpkin patches.
They are,
but deer understand that. Mm-hmm. Deer will go nocturnal almost on the day of opening day.
I get back to that same question. Another thing you can do: start sharing information like this with people that you know. Start educating other people.
I was just going to say education.
Yeah,
education and learning, shooting the right doe. It can be something as simple as that. You can go down
you can't cut trees.
Right, you can't cut trees.
You can't go planting things.
Now, that's not to say that you could get in touch with it. Now, I know some areas around here, the DNR has done plantings.
Yes.
Now, in that state area that you're at, are they doing plantings in the area or they're not? You can probably go to your local DNR field office and ask them, and they'll be able to tell you where these fields are. Mm-hmm. So, maybe you could have them ask them.
Yeah, up where I was elk hunting, there's a lot of fields planted up there.
Right. Don't be afraid to go into the biologist, the field office, and talk directly to the biologist. The DNR officers are out there for the laws, but the biologist is the one that's supposed to know what's going on in their local area.
That's right.
What projects, what's going on. So maybe you can go in there, ask them about the state land that you're hunting. Ask them, hey,
are we doing any habitat projects?
What are we doing? What are we cutting? Are we not cutting? Start knocking on their door.
Yeah.
Getting the education going.
And volunteer, and like I said, once again, just share the information you've got with other people. So,
Dave Hamady says, hey.
Hey, Dave.
Kevin, electric fences around the beehives will keep bear out. Might have to use solar power battery. That's a great idea. Actually.
We've heard of some people using them. They generally work, but I know some people that's tried it and had a heck of a time that still wound up getting
really
high. Yeah. Once they kind of figure out what it is and how to get around it, I mean, they'll figure it out or knock it down. If it ever gets knocked down,
it's over.
It's fair game. We've thought about raised platforms on metal poles. We've thought about that. We've thought about, we just haven't really come up with a good solution.
I don't know if there's a bear proof
beehive. Right.
Except a metal box.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just another one of them things that, maybe it's not a viable solution up in the northern reaches of Michigan, but, maybe here in the southern areas, people that got farms or ag land, maybe, you can talk to a local beekeeper and offer your land up to be used for pollinators, for them to put hives out, and then they just help, the wildlife that way. So.
Right. And going back to Willie's question, by going to the local office, showing them that you're interested, gives them instant feedback that people care.
Right.
They might even turn you on to a local organization that might be working the area.
Right.
That you can check out. So, yeah, there's definitely different ways and ideas to hit state land. Obviously, we got to follow the rules of the state land here in Michigan and other states. But if you start knocking on the office doors, start asking questions, finding out what's going on, you can help out.
Absolutely, and get involved. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Get involved with your local wildlife groups. Maybe it's Pheasants Forever, Sharp-tailed Grouse Society. Even on the fishing side, the Trout Unlimited,
NWTF,
NWTF, Whitetails Unlimited. There's lots of organizations out there, and it may not directly impact the actual piece of ground that you're hunting, but overall it makes a difference. And that goes back to, like I said, if you've got private land, no matter how small it is, make some kind of contribution. Talk to your neighbors. Form a co-op. Things like that. Start working together. Work with people. And networking. I think networking is probably the one thing that we have the ability to do that really doesn't cost a lot out of our pocket. The biggest cost is time and effort. But networking with people, and that's what we did a lot of yesterday. We talked to a lot of people that...
that's what we've done. We've done over there at Turtle Lake, the club. We've networked. Mm-hmm. We didn't get a chance to talk to the DNR commissioner that was there. Mm-hmm. But then we did the same. We've done the same thing with other groups. Let them go, let them grow. Lincoln Ronin Company over there. We got over there, met them, and you start networking, and you start meeting, and you start learning. I met a gentleman yesterday from the UP. He's really involved with the UP stuff that's going on, and I said, hey, let's keep in touch because I can't get up there all the time.
And it's a young guy, which is encouraging.
And therein lies some of the problems as well. Mm-hmm. Getting the younger crowd involved to keep this going for generations to come, because right now he's seeing in his club up there that he's the youngest one of the youngest at 38.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to change old minds.
That too.
Yeah, that's another problem we're having to overcome.
And then I talked to Luke about this, about the UP, and he said that's a whole entire another state,
right?
Which it is. But it's mindset. It's wanting to change. It's education, mm-hmm. and you go from there. So.
Well, kind of to wrap up everything here, and this is going to be a quick little generalization and throw it all in a nutshell.
Before you generalize, what was the final on our poll?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to go back here and take a look. It was 75% said yes. Every time I see a deer when driving at night, I've wondered why their eyes shine.
Three-quarters of the people.
Yeah, 25% said no, not really. So there you go. But, kind of going back, Dr. Kroll had mentioned yesterday that Turtle Lake was the oldest hunting club in the United States. I knew it was in Michigan, but I didn't know it was the United States.
Yeah, he added that footnote.
So with that being said, I got to thinking, okay, so these guys in Michigan, however many there were, collectively wanted to have this hunting camp club, and they formed this place. What's going on in the United States about that time? So I, kind of just dove in real quick, and it's like, to think about what was going on at the time in the United States. And the cornerstone for the Statue of Liberty was set. in 1884, and I think that's the year that they were formed. The Washington Monument was finished that year.
Some great things happened.
The father of modern conservation, we kind of think of the modern model of U.S. conservation, Teddy Roosevelt. Oddly enough, in 1884, at this time of the year, lost his first wife and his mother at the same time. And to think about somebody losing somebody so close to him, and then, maybe that was the impetus that kind of pushed him into the wilderness and started thinking about the outdoors.
You never know.
And thinking how great it was, and we need to preserve this for other people. But it got me thinking about the pioneers and people pushing and thinking about modern conservation. That's what we were doing yesterday.
Well,
it's the new modern conservation.
Exactly. We're now the next generation to keep pushing conservation for the next generation.
Modern science is being used.
It's a merry-go-round.
Yeah.
But you have to keep the merry-go-round going with sound science and not break it.
So you think about 1884, it's now 136 years later. 136 years since that time period of when that was formed up there. Where are we going to be in 136 years from now? When we look at 2156.
There you go.
Who's going to look back and say the people of that time in 2020 did something great in their own area to make their hunting better and preserved it for future generations? So we're going to leave you with that deep thought.
There you go.
So for those of you on the podcast, we're going to sign off right now. Take that little bit of tidbit and chew on it this week. If you got anything interesting you want to comment about, throw us a message and let us know. If you would, please share on Facebook your social media pages. Danny will be posting the show as well over on YouTube.
Yep.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. These things help the people who help us bring you the show each week. So y'all take care, and we'll see you again next week.
And don't forget, you can catch us in syndication at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on goodtalkradio.com. This episode was brought to you by
PSE Archery,
Buck Baits,
Better the Hunt,
Rebel 6 Rubs and Seasonings,
Easy Cut,
Lim Walker Game Calls,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Packer Max,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Scent Blocker,
Scent Lock,
Copper John,
and Stanislawski Release Aids.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.